Hi, everyone, and welcome to Our Disabled Future, a series where disabled voices lead the way. I'm your host, Nico, and it is a good day for disability inclusion. Each day, during Disability Pride Month and beyond, I'm amplifying real disabled voices, where we are, where we want to go, and how the heck we're going to get there. Together, I think. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Carol. Let's dive in. Hi, Carol. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Nika. Glad to be here.
Of course. Carol, tell us about yourself and your disabled life.
Well, thank you for having me here today. My name is Carol Rozumowski. My pronouns are she and her. Up here in Seattle, it's kind of customary for us to share pronouns. I know that may not feel familiar to a lot of folks. So, a little bit about our culture up here. My disability has been one that I lived with my entire life. I know people are really curious about what disables us, so I'm just going to offer the fact that I have cerebral palsy. I use a power wheelchair for mobility, and I'm 53 years old. I'm a new aunt of a little niece named Annabelle. I'm very excited about that. Um, and so that's kind of on the horizon for me to kind of step into that role and see what that's like. I do work full time. I am a public employee um, in the area, and I work as a strategic operations advisor. I also do some consulting on the side. So the reason why I was interested to participate in this interview is the fact that I am maybe a little bit older than some of the other participants who are in the project, but I am still very much in love with the idea of what my future can hold. And so I wanted to offer what it might look like for somebody in the season of life where they're in their early 50s and to visualize what that might look like.
That's really meaningful. Thank you for offering that perspective because it adds a lot of breadth to my current project. Carol, you've done a great job of telling us about your disability and how you navigate it and what your life looks like currently. Excuse me. So, what does a disability-friendly future look like for you?
Well, I think for me, as I visualize what a pro disability future looks like for me, is that we continue pressing forward on the work that we've done historically. And so I just happen to be familiar with the experience of being a child under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And then I already disclosed my age, so it doesn't matter, but the ADA got passed my first year of college. And so a lot of my identity formation and a lot of the things that influenced my forward facing self was informed with a society that wasn't constructed in the way that it is now with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's so thrilling to see some of the work that my predecessors, like Judy Heumann, have done to have had lasting impacts. And then I think about where we are now, and I feel very privileged because in some respects, I didn't visualize that my life was going to look the way that it does. I mentioned that I work as a public employee. I'm gainfully employed. Um, I own a condo. I get around easily on public transportation. I have a very rich and fulfilling life, and it's so great to see that the work that folks have done have really materially impacted folks like me so I can have this amazing life that I do. I do also think that there's room to grow and make improvements. So with employment in particular, which is a particular interest of mine, we have certain protections under the ADA, but they're limited in that the language describes that equal opportunity will be provided for qualified people with disabilities. And that I think is not fair because when people go in for a job interview, there's no guarantee that they're qualified. They have to go through an application process, a screening process, and maybe they do well in that process. Maybe they don't. Maybe the process goes well for them. They get hired, but then it turns out they're not qualified. So the way that I perceive it is there's an undue burden on people with disabilities to overlead with their qualifications. And so for me, I think the way that I've experienced that is like this kind of continuous uh press to want to prove myself. And it's only until recently that I'm just like, hey, I add value. What I do intrinsically is valuable, and I don't have to prove it over and over again. So I think as I visualize the future, I think that what I would like to see is for that urgency to not have to be there for people that are coming into the world of employment and they're managing life with disability at the same time.
Thank you so much, Carol. This answer really speaks to me and how I had a lot of questions about how I should present when I began my own career or when I
Right.
first got full-time employment. I really appreciate that perspective.
I did notice, like Nico, in your profile, you come from a public administration background.
That's
Uh,
true.
and I come with a social work background and also an education background. But
Oh,
like I was like, oh, I have to go and get that master's degrees in order to really beef up my resume so I can get in
yeah.
the door. And so I don't know if people who don't live with disabilities have that same motivation with the same amplitude that we might experience because of our disabilities.
That's a good question. I'm sure there are other intersecting factors as well. I know that education and degree attainment, specifically degree attainment, was big in my family. So I
Oh
felt
yeah,
that
yeah,
external and
definitely
intrinsic pressure to go get that MPA.
understood.
Carol, I can tell that you've put a lot of thought into this, and I really value that. So we've talked about where you are in your disabled life, and we talked about the changes you've seen and what you want to see happen in the future. But how do we get there? What's our playbook? What's our strategy?
Well, honestly, I think we need to put out examples like what you're doing through your interview series. It's like, uh, people can be very courageous and they can be very self-driven, but it's so helpful to see examples of how people have done it. Where are people that have had similar experiences as you, and what have they done? What were the mistakes that they made? What did they learn from those mistakes? Um, what were their challenges? What were their opportunities? What fits? What resonates? Shouldn't say fit, but what resonates from their experience that you connect with? So I think that's like a big piece of it is like sharing our stories, and that was a big motivator for me being here today. I think we also need to give folks with disabilities opportunities to learn through experimentation. I think one of the impacts of being seen as disabled or knowing that you have a disability is the emphasis is on what you can't do or the way you do things in a different way. without seeing where the value is, without seeing, what does this person bring in their humanity? What do they bring in terms of knowledge about how to operate in the world that's unique, that generates wisdom? So we need to continue to create spaces like that. Um, One thing that I've always found really interesting is as a cultural group, we don't have lineage in the same way that other groups do. So people that have a common ethnicity or a common racial experience have people in proximity to them often, not always, but often, that can provide them with support, provide them with wisdom, provide them with warnings, where are the dangers? Um, that's not always true for folks with disabilities. And we have to go out and seek that mentorship, that wisdom. And so, in that way, I feel kind of like a sense of commonality with the LGBTQIA community because they have to intentionally create community to provide support and acceptance. And I think there's opportunity for coalition building and shared wisdom in that sense. And for me, I also think by having this insight, I need to kind of double down on my wisdom, on my commitment to social justice more broadly, because the disability community was supported by the Black community, by the LGBTQ community. We got where we have been able to get in society because we were part of a coalition. And that needs to remain the same as we forge our future together.
I love how you end on that note, forging our future together. That's really fantastic. In this answer, I hear you calling for building more community, more mentorship opportunity, and like you say, more room for disabled people to experiment, try new things, and find what works for them. Um,
Mhm.
Overall, I concur with you that disabled people can just be disabled people without having to prove extent of disability or how much they can work or what specific work they can do. I don't know about you, but I'm tired about jumping through hoops.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, uh, the threat of failure for people with disabilities, I think, is real.
Mhm.
Um, because failure tends to be ascribed to not being able to do something. It doesn't get seen as like an area of development or an area of learning or an area of curiosity or just an area of folly or foolishness. I mean, don't I get to be silly and uh and carefree as well? I mean, we have a pretty well established narrative of like mistakes are great because we can really learn from what we've done wrong. But you have to have the oxygen to allow that to happen. I realize it's kind of ironic for somebody with CP who was deprived of oxygen at birth, calling for oxygen later in life. Maybe that's my legacy is to say we just need to all breathe. But that's my humor.
I really
But
respect
really,
that.
I think we just need to say I'm entitled to, can I swear? Can I just say, can we just fuck up? Isn't it? I mean, it's not going to end the world if I make a mistake. Now, I need to own my mistakes and recognize them for what they are, but they're not catastrophic. And I do feel like in my reflective experience, as I look at what I've gone through life, that's something that I probably would have wanted to embrace earlier is to say, I don't have to be perfect, or I don't have to be the model disabled person. I can just be me.
Absolutely.
And you
Let's
can
hope it,
edit the F word out later.
no, 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 not at all. Let's hope that future comes to fruition and soon. All right, Carol, I've had a wonderful time speaking with you, and it sounds like we resonate together on many issues. As
Yeah.
we draw our time to a close today, I want to give space to you that you and I, as disabled people, really rarely get, and that is a chance to just brag about yourself. If you have any recent wins or something cool you're currently doing, let us know about that.
Um,
If you want people to find you online, where can they find you? This is your
Absolutely.
soapbox.
Um, so I do have a hard to spell last name, but hopefully that will appear in the interview description. But
Oh,
I'm
yes.
always happy to connect with folks. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Carol Rozumowski. Um, I can also be found at clearreachconsults.com. I do disability consulting and accessibility consulting, and more broadly, just like navigating problem solving systems, more broadly. And you can reach out through my website as well.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Carol. I really appreciate our conversation and I appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you very much, and glad to be here.
Of course, everybody, tune in next time. Remember, this is our disabled future, and we're building it one day at a time together. I'm Nico Meyering. Wherever you go, whatever you do, I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Bye.